Mohammed. We're now going to start the program with the recitation of Quran.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إنما المؤمنون إخوة فأصلحوا بين أخويكم واتقوا الله لعلكم ترحمون. يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا يسخر قوم من قوم عسى أن يكون خيرا منهم ولا نساء من نساء عسى أن يكون خيرا منهم ولا تلمزوا أنفسكم ولا تنابزوا بالألقاب بئس الاسم الفسوق بعد الإيمان ومن لم يتب فأولئك هم الظالمون. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اجتنبوا كثيرا من الظن إن بعض الظن إثم ولا تجسسوا ولا يغتب بعضكم بعضا أيحب أحدكم أن يأكل لحم أخيه ميتا فكرهتموه واتقوا الله إن الله تواب رحيم. يا أيها الناس إنا خلقناكم من ذكر وأنثى وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا إن أكرمكم عند الله أتقاكم إن الله عليم خبير. قالت الأعراب آمنا قل لم تؤمنوا ولكن قولوا أسلمنا ولما يدخل الإيمان في قلوبكم وإن تطيعوا الله ورسوله لا يلتكم من أعمالكم شيئا إن الله غفور رحيم. إنما المؤمنون الذين آمنوا بالله ورسوله ثم لم يرتابوا وجاهدوا بأموالهم وأنفسهم في سبيل الله أولئك هم الصادقون. قل أتعلمون الله بدينكم والله يعلم ما في السماوات وما في الأرض والله بكل شيء عليم. يمنون عليك أن أسلموا قل لا تمنوا علي إسلامكم بل الله يمن عليكم أن هداكم للإيمان إن كنتم صادقين. إن الله يعلم غيب السماوات والأرض والله بصير بما تعملون. صدق الله الجبار العظيم.
Assalamu alaikum everyone. Today we're very fortunate to have a panel discussion on the topic of why have Muslims had their bank accounts withdrawn, and we're very fortunate to have three brilliant speakers today. Let's welcome with Salat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Please come forward. Please. Anyway.
السلام عليكم.
So we have three brilliant speakers today. Firstly, on the left-hand side, actually replacing Fadi Itani, who's the CEO of Muslim Charities Forum, we actually have Barash, who is the National Emergencies and Members Engagement Coordinator at the Muslim Charities Forum. He's an Aziz scholar and has a Master's in Development Studies from SOAS, as well as a BA in Politics and International Relations. His work includes representing the Muslim Charities Forum nationally on various panels, and he's currently working on this very topic, investigating the banking challenges of the Muslim charity sector. In the middle, we have Anas al-Tikriti, who's a British Iraqi and the founder and CEO of the Cordoba Foundation. He's a political analyst, media commentator, international speaker, and an advisor and consultant to many UK and international organizations on Muslim politics, and a range of other topics. Finally, on the right-hand side, we have Mohammed Kozbar, who's the Deputy Secretary General of the Muslim Council of Britain and the Chairman of Finsbury Park Mosque, one of the most prominent centres in the UK. He holds a Master's degree in Charity Management and is a member of the Islington Faiths Forum, representing the Muslim community in North London. He's also a columnist to the Middle East Eye, and he's a member of the Crown Prosecution Service London Scrutiny and Involvement Panel in hate crimes. So we're very fortunate to have a really brilliant panel today who will be speaking to us on this very topic. And this topic is all about Muslims and the banking sector and what's happened quite recently. And what we're going to try and do through this panel discussion is talk about the topic in general, but also bring out the specific stories of what's happened for individual people and the impact it has had on them and therefore on many other Muslims in this country. We'll also try and touch on what's happened very recently with the regulatory, with the FCA coming up with their outcome of their inquiry into this topic, and we'll obviously touch on how Nigel Farage started all of this off at the very outset. So that's the topic today. Brilliant panel here, very well placed to be able to respond to it. So let's start right from the left-hand side. Barash, can we just talk about your understanding of what's happening, the background to what's happening, in particular how Muslim charities have been impacted by this?
I was actually worried that you were going to start with me and my worries come true, so I don't know how appropriate it is to have my elders and then to start before them. Bismillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah. If I was to provide a summary of what is taking place, it is nothing short of financial discrimination. And I think we need to get that clear. Muslims have been facing the challenges for the past 20 years. It's nothing new to us. So what Nigel Farage is facing is just, just the tip of the iceberg. And it's funny that was backed by cutes. It's just like so, I don't know, it's like perfect. But Allah Ta'ala has now opened us a door. The issue is now back in the mainstream, and it's time for us to definitely take advantage of this.
And what do you? So can you just talk a little bit about the background that you've seen in terms of how Muslim charities over the last 20 years, in general, that you've seen what's happened? How have Muslim charities been affected by their banking services being withdrawn?
If I was to put it into two categories, one would be the actual bank accounts and then the activities of financial services. So firstly, the closure of bank accounts, you just get sent a letter, your bank account's closing, masalama, that's it. And then you have 60 days to arrange whatever you need to do. And then that's just...
And how many charities, have a lot of charities faced that?
This is a bit of an interesting question. Charities don't like talking about the challenge that they face. It's a bit of a double-edged sword for them, where if they come out and say, look, we're facing banking challenges, or we've been debanked, or we are categorized as being too risky, you have an issue with donors. You essentially lose their trust. And then secondly, you might have multiple bank accounts. So if you've been debanked by one bank, another bank in a corporation or a collective or coalition would come together and say, look, you've been debanked by this banking group. So maybe we should also debank you as well. So charities don't like talking about it. However, there are mechanisms such as MCF where they can tell us, and then we can put our case together, Muslim Charities Forum, as a collective, and say, look, these are the challenges that we are facing, and here's the evidence. However, our members and the people that have told us information do not want to come forward due to reputation management.
Thank you very much. Do you see this as a problem that has got worse or better in recent times, or was it really bad near 9/11 or 7/7, or since then? What's been the instigator in your view?
There are definitely peaks and troughs. But what's really interesting is that the mechanisms that were used to debank Muslims are now being applied to non-Muslims as well, which is really interesting because banks just don't want to deal with the money of charities, especially those working in conflict zones. So we've seen some mainstream charities also facing these challenges. And recently, I think the Nigel Farage case has just sort of opened that door into that messiness.
And can you just talk a little bit about what's driving the decision-making here? So is it because of supposed links to extremism? Is it linked to money going into certain locations and certain areas which are problematic? Like what is the reason why this is happening to Muslim charities?
So the research shows that charities have a low risk. I think there was a research published in 2018 that said that charities are low risk in terms of money laundering and financing terrorism, but they're being debanked. So you can assume the best about money being sent to conflict zones, and that's why they're being debanked, and that's why they're being de-risked. But there's just something's not adding up. And we can say that, it's the far right, or it's an Israeli lobby, or whatever it may be. But whatever it is, something's not right, and that needs to be investigated thoroughly.
And what's the...
If you don't mind me saying, recently the FCA actually issued a statement saying that there's been no one's been debanked or been de-risked due to political reasons. And they've done this whole investigation in 2 months, which I think is a foreshadowing of what's to come if somebody was to go in and do proper forensic accounting and see what's going on.
And what's the role of the government in all of this? Have the government been helpful or hindering in this process?
Well, when you used to go to the government and say, look, the banking sector is a private sector, we can't get involved in their affairs. Before, you would go to the bank and say, look, we're well within the rights of the law, we're not doing anything wrong, we're just mitigating our risk. But I think what will happen with Nigel Farage is clearly that when they want to be politically active, they can. And they can mobilize when they want to. And it's just that it's about who they really care about. I'm sure if we had hundreds of billions in certain banks, we'd be able to pull some maneuvers as well. But we're not. We don't have accounts in cutes, I'm afraid, as Muslim charities.
Okay, thank you very much. Anas, can I move to you and talk a little about yourself and your particular history in this? Can you just talk a little about what happened to you before, and then perhaps what happened more recently as well with Barclays?
Yeah. First of all, assalamu alaikum, everyone, and thank you very much for organising this panel and for having us, because very few others are. I mean, that's the very first thing to say. I think it's important to note exactly what it is we're talking about. I might be spending a little bit of time talking about my personal circumstance, but this is by no means something that is personal to myself or to MCF or to Finsbury Park Mosque or to individuals. This is something which is problematic on a national scale, and it's something that I think it's very important that we as British citizens, as taxpayers, as, by the way, and this is very important, as people whose taxes bailed out those very banks to the tune of tens, probably hundreds of billions over the course of the past 15 years. So we're not talking about something that is away from us and something that we don't need to be concerned about too much. It's something that is very, very close to us. Now, in my case, the first time I was debanked was in July of 2014. So it's, 9 and a bit years. And that came out of the blue. It was something that I thought was a mistake. And I treated with a bit of bewilderment, because I didn't understand how this could actually happen. At the time, I was debanked by HSBC, a bank that I was with for, at then, 29 years. the very first bank account that I opened as an A-level student in 1985. And it basically had all my accounts. When I got married, my wife, she opened with HSBC. When I had children, we opened savings accounts in their names at HSBC. It was basically the bank that myself and my family had all our banking dealings with. So out of the blue, to get a letter, actually we got 5 letters that same day, addressed to each one of us, including my children, who were at the time aged 16 or 15 and 12. And it all said the same thing, that we don't want, we're closing down your accounts, and we don't want you to ever apply for a bank account ever again. At the time, I thought this was a mistake that could be rectified, but there was a very clear indication in the letter that the bank was in its full right not to offer any explanation and not to respond to my questions. Why? I mean, that you'd think is something which is sort of natural, that if something happens, especially of this magnitude, that you ask why. Is it okay if I carry on? And please do feel free to stop me. This then became something that occurred more or less every year. As we speak, I have been debanked by 7 banks. And the number of accounts that have been closed down amount to 12. They are personal, they are business, and like I said, some pertaining to family. Never have I been offered an explanation. Never, not one single time. It got normal, something that I would half expect, until the Nigel Farage case happened. And the Nigel Farage case actually exposed the real problem here. And the problem that we need to all concern ourselves with is the problem of discrimination, the problem of racism. This is essentially what has been exposed by Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage being a white, right-wing, some would say even extreme right-wing politician of quite considerable wealth, who runs a media channel. As soon as he came out with the news that his bank account had been closed, and he accused the bank of closing it down because of his political views. If you recall, for about a week to 10 days, the news on the BBC, on Channel 4, the newspapers, radio stations, forgot that there was a war in Ukraine, because the top story was Nigel Farage and the fact that his account had been closed every single day. And it led to the Prime Minister making a statement and ordering an investigation. It led to Parliament having a special session to discuss how this could happen. It caused the bosses of Coutts as well as NatWest to step down. The entire boards of those banks were threatened of being sacked. The bank told Nigel Farage, issued an apology and said, we will reinstate your account. And he said, that's not enough. I'm going to seek damages. And very, very likely he will get the damages that he's seeking. And yet, no. Coutts themselves offered to reinstate his accounts. Absolutely. The thing about the threshold, by the way, is it was a fabrication. It was a lie. No. But the reason why he was closed down wasn't because of the threshold. It wasn't because of the threshold.
It was a lie.
It was a lie. And there was a whistleblower inside the bank who told Nigel Farage to push forward with this, because there are emails between whoever was running the show, saying that this guy, we just don't like his politics. And by the way, I mean, I've said this openly several times. And despite my disdain for his politics, and for probably him as a person, probably, I actually support him in this, and support his campaign in order to get compensation.
I would suggest that surely your issue is separate from Nigel Farage's. I accept what you're saying about Nigel Farage, but isn't the problem this work check system that all banks have? So hence, you can go from one bank to another bank, and because they all look at the same database, you're automatically going to be debanked sooner or later whenever they do
that brings us back to the very argument that Nigel Farage sparked, and that is, do banks make these decisions based on political or ideological reasons or not? The banks say never. The FCA said never. My contention is that's the only reason why I'm continuously debanked. That's the only reason. I have never, in my case, now I didn't want to come to the personal before I outline the case, because the case concerns every single one of us. And this is something that's going to grow. It's not going to recede. This case is not going to cause it to sort of stagger. It is actually going to make more and more banks alert to the fact that they can debank people and they can get rid of whatever risk, whether it's minute or whether it's considerable. But coming back to me, the reason I'm on WorldCheck, and by the way, I, as an individual on WorldCheck, I'm an individual. I'm not classified as anything at all. I was classified as a PIP, a person of a PPI, sorry, a person of political interest. But I've been demoted. If you go and check on Refinitiv, you'll find that I'm an individual. I have absolutely no classification. Yet this is happening time and time again. Plus,
so just before that, can you talk about what WorldCheck is for those who don't know?
WorldCheck is basically a booming industry that started, I would suggest, maybe about 15 years ago. And that is that this whole concept of the war on terror, this opened many people's attentions and eyes to certain business opportunities. One of them was, well, you know, employers, companies, banks, clubs that have members and the such, they would need to check on their members just in case, you know, they are somehow involved in terrorism in any sort. So we will compile profiles. Basically, we will compile profiles. We will take people and basically Google search them. It's very silly. It's very primitive. I've seen my profile on WorldCheck. It's about 80 pages thick, but it is something which, at the time, I said this to the BBC, my 12-year-old could do a better job at researching. It's simply cut and paste. You know, Google, cut and paste, cut and paste, cut and paste. It is that. There is nothing else. Absolutely nothing else. And if in somewhere amongst those news links that anything pertaining to terrorism is mentioned, it's flagged as a red signal. Okay? So there is something concerning terrorism. It might be that I spoke against terrorism in a particular, but that's since, you know, that's the headline, that's going to flash up. In my case, a country whom I criticized for its human rights record thought that the best way to deal with me was to put me on its terrorist list. Now, that country, imagine, I mean, it's, by the way, it's the UAE, it's the United Arab Emirates, because I criticized it as well as Saudi Arabia and many other countries for their human rights records. My argument was, imagine if North Korea placed Rishi Sunak on a terrorist list, or Joe Biden on a terrorist list. How serious would the world take that? I would suggest that the entire world, or most of the world, 90% of the world, would say that's just rubbish. You know? So why is it that a country that is undemocratic, authoritarian, that is known by human rights organizations around the world, including Amnesty, Human Rights Watch and the such, is allowed to have such influence on people's lives, including myself, and not only myself, but hundreds of others, simply because, you know, that's the only way it could get to them. It could silence them. So this is briefly about WorldCheck. I'm going to just finish up with something I think is extremely important, and something that needs to be said from the outset. Many might think, and today I tweeted something, well, it's not tweet anymore, is it? I posted something on X, and I put in a hashtag, and I said, first world problems. Because this is, I mean, let's face it, I mean, when you look at Syria, when you look at Yemen, when you look at Libya, when you look at Morocco, when you look at, you know, various other countries, Palestine, when you look at, I mean, what, come on, I mean, I'm having my bank account closed down. I mean, people are starving. People are dying. So I deliberately hashtagged that these are first world problems. But they are problems of quite serious impact. And once again, I come back to this, that we as British citizens, taxpayers and law-abiding, we have a duty not only towards ourselves and our communities, but also to the British people who are oblivious to what is happening to them. Banking is as crucial in a country like ours as electricity and water. It's an essential human right to have a bank, because without a bank account, you can't do anything. You can't get a job because people don't pay you in cash. They don't put bundles of £20 notes in an envelope and give it to you. They want to transfer to your bank. You can't run a business because how are you going to pay rent? How are you going to pay your taxes? How are you going to employ people without a bank account? You can't do anything. I was on a show recently, and I said a few weeks ago, on the very day, the Barclays, and I'll come to Barclays because that is a story that even when I tell it, I'm sort of in disbelief. I'm sort of half not believing myself. A few weeks ago, on one single day, without me knowing, because I hadn't still seen the letter, my 3 credit cards were closed down, as well as my bank account. Okay? I found myself unable to get on a bus. I can't get on a train or catch the tube. I can't call an Uber because none of my cards are working. Okay? I had to walk for 2.5 hours in order to get home. Now, alhamdulillah, it was a sunny day. It was 10 a.m. It was fine. Imagine if it was late at night. Imagine if I was unwell enough to walk. Imagine if I was in a foreign country whose language I don't speak. And I therefore wrote to my bank and I posted publicly and said to them, you are putting me in danger, in harm's way by doing this. This is not something that banks should do. The water company can't decide, I don't like this customer. I don't like what they stand for. I don't like their religion. I don't like their political beliefs. So you know what? I'm going to turn off the water. They are not supposed to do that. Banks should make decisions based on financial considerations. And the fact of the matter, and I'll stop here, our financial sector is the very hub of the UK economy. And therefore, no one, and I say this absolutely, no one in government, no one in parliament, no one even on the FCA, or the Ombudsman, for instance, no regulator will come near to depriving the financial sector of its interests and the authority it holds over all of us. It will not be something that the government will stand by me, you, by Mohammed Kozbar, by the MCF, or by anyone else in the face of banks. Wallah.
Thank you very much for that quite powerful story and what's happened to you. Mohammed, can we come to you and can you talk a little about what happened to yourself in Finsbury Park Mosque and the issues about debanking with you?
Yes, of course. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. Just to start with, when your bank account closed, which means it will have definitely an impact on your reputation and your credibility, because unless you've done something wrong, your bank account shouldn't be closed. And people will start questioning why your bank account is closed. And when you don't have an answer for it, it's becoming even worse. And this was happened to us. I mean, to us, when I say to us, it's about Finsbury Park Mosque and about me personally. Personally, my bank account being closed twice in 2 different banks, NatWest and Barclays. But, I mean, alhamdulillah, I managed to open another account in a small bank, keep myself low profile, although no one leaving me alone in terms of profile. But alhamdulillah, I'm trying my best to maintain that, because as Anas said, without a bank account, your life will be in difficulties. You will not be able to live a normal life. But when it comes to institutions, like many charities, Muslim charities in particular, mosques, including our mosque, Finsbury Park Mosque, which it was one among the first who their account being closed. This happened in 2014, when we have received a letter again in the post saying we were with HSBC at that time, and we've been with them for many years. We never had an issue, whether it is financial or otherwise. So our let me say, page with them is absolutely clear. We didn't have any problem before. But despite all of that, we received this letter saying that there's no appetite to work with us as a business, and therefore they decided to close our bank account, which at that time was the only bank account we had. And when a mosque like ours, their bank account is closed, how are we going to operate? How are we going to function? How are we going to pay our employees? How are we going to pay our bills? How are we going to receive donations? So this is the financial element of it that will affect hugely on us, and this is what's happened. They give us 2-month notice to go and find another bank. When we approached them, asked them about the reason behind closing our bank account, they said, we have the right, according to the contract with you, that we don't even tell you what is the reason. And they refused to give us the reason why they closed our bank account. And this makes us really thinking about what we've done, what's wrong we've done as organizations. For many of you, I'm sure you heard about Finsbury Park Mosque. Before 2005, it was, let me say, hijacked by a bunch of extremists at that time, Abu Hamza and his supporters, and it was a problem to everyone in the local community and beyond the local community. It was a problem to the country, and even I can say it's beyond that as well at that time, because of what's happening in that area. Tensions between the neighbors and the local Muslim community who come and pray with these people, police presence all the time, media presence all the time, all negative stories about the Muslim community and about the mosque and so on. Alhamdulillah, in 2005, we managed as a community to bring back this mosque to the community. And since then, it wasn't just only a mosque, it was a community center which opened for everyone. And that's an achievement as a community, alhamdulillah, an achievement to say that we as a community, when we have the chance, we can change things for the positive, and this is what's happened.
And can you just tell, so after you were debanked by, was it HSBC at the time, you then took libel action against Thomson Reuters. Can you just tell us about what Thomson Reuters did and how you responded and what you did with them?
Yeah, after our bank being closed, the BBC contacted us. I'm sure you know the journalist Peter Oben. He contacted us and he said he would like to come and have interview about our bank account and about the mosque in general. So he came and he interviewed me. After about an hour of interview, after we finished, he said, do you know that you as a mosque been listed in the terrorist under the terrorist category in the world check, which belonged to Thomson Reuters at that time. And I for myself, I didn't, I didn't believe what I heard first. I said, "Can you repeat what you said? Because I didn't get what you said." So he repeated the question, and I said, "Are you sure?" He said, "Yes, I'm sure, and I already printed out the papers for you to read it." So it was a shocking moment for me to know that we are categorized as a terrorist organization in this particular company. And this company, by the way, as Anas mentioned, it has hundreds of thousands of clients, all of them banks, companies, big companies, even government departments. They get their information from this particular company. And believe it or not, most of their information is from Google. So when I check our, when he gave me the papers and I checked what they have about us, mainly is from Google, from certain right-wing media and newspapers, and that's it. There is nothing really which you can say that it is something they put efforts to get. They get it from internet. So we decided at that time that we need to do something. We cannot keep silence about that. We cannot keep it quiet. First of all, I contacted Charity Commission to explain to them that now we don't have a bank account. What shall we do? You are our regulators, so you should really help us with that. So they were really very helpful. They sent us a letter saying you should look for another bank account. So that's the way they help us, actually, to tell us that go and check and open another bank account. It looks like we didn't think about that. So it was difficult for us to think about going and check and get another bank account. We tried all bank accounts at that time, and none of them except to open a bank account for us. Because, as I said, your reputation is damaged. We've worked very hard to build that reputation, and by closing our bank account, it's been tarnished. And we have to, even our relationship, and this is the other element of it. It's the financial element and the reputation element. Because even your stakeholders from your community and beyond, they will, and they ask us why they close your bank account. We didn't have an answer for that. And some of them, they stopped working with us because of that. And this, I think whoever, because I don't think this is a bank decision only. It's beyond that. It is somebody somewhere told banks to close bank account for certain institutions and organizations from the Muslim community and individuals as well. Because, as we said, because of their political views or because of their religious background. So that's what's happened. So what we did, we took action against Thomson Reuters at that time, and we were the first Muslim organizations in the country to take action, legal action against them. First of all, they didn't take it serious. They didn't take it serious. They sent us silly letters saying, no, this is true, and if you want, you can go all the way, and we will fight it in court, and all these sort of things. So we decided to go to the end, because we didn't think about us only. We thought about all the Muslim organizations who, by the way, thousands of them, here in the UK and in the elsewhere, not just only the UK, probably tens of thousands of Muslim organizations under that category, and all of them suffers because of that. So we thought that it is very important for us to take this to the end and win the case, if we can, inshallah ta'ala, and then open the door to other organizations and individuals to do that. And this is what we did. We took it all the way until they realized that they will lose the case. And I remember they approached us in 2000. We started this in 2014, 15, I don't remember. until 2016-17, when they contacted us and they said we would like to settle the case. So we agreed to settle the case on 3 conditions. One, a clear apology about what they did, to pay compensation, and to pay all our legal fees. And the 4th one is to remove our name from that category. And alhamdulillah, we achieved that. And since we won that case, it became a very high-profile case, alhamdulillah, and we opened the door to hundreds of Muslim organizations and individuals to take action against WorldCheck. We forced them to sell the company to someone else, and they restructured the whole company now. It's different. Alhamdulillah, recently, a few years ago, they removed our name completely from their list. So if your name is not there, which means you are a good man, or you are a good guy. If your name is there, even under the individuals, there is a big question mark if people see your name there. So whoever their name is there, try to do whatever you can to remove it, inshallah.
Thank you very much. So we've seen examples of charities, of individuals, of mosques, and the challenges that are being faced. Can we just talk about two threads I'd like to talk about? One in particular is pro-Palestinian charities, and the second one is accusations of Islamism. Those two seem to be coming up a lot when it comes to these issues. So, Barish, can I start with you? From Muslim Charities Forum, there must be pro-Palestinian charities there, or mainstream Muslim charities who are doing work in the Palestinian territories, in Palestine. Can you just talk a little bit about what you notice or what you've seen about how pro-Palestinian organizations are targeted in any way on this topic?
To put it bluntly, if you work in Palestine, good luck. It's one of the most challenging places, and even the mainstream charities actually have to face consequences of operating there. I think the most high-profile case in the Muslim charity scene has been Islamic Relief, when they were declared as a terrorist organization, and they were no longer able to operate in Palestine, and then they were not able to operate in Gaza. They could only operate in the West Bank, and just the bureaucracy just continued. In terms of operating in Palestine now, I think the challenges are still there. With the new stance of the Israeli government, I'm assuming it's only going to get harder. However, there's actually a new thread that's taking place, which I'd like to take it to, and that's now social media companies deplatforming you and not allowing you to fundraise on their platform. And we've seen this with Meta, where certain Muslim organizations haven't been able to fundraise, or their fundraising mechanisms and tools have been taken away from them. Now, where does the boundary lie here? So it was banks, now it's going to social media, now it's going into actually new forms of fundraising. We've heard of emailing companies and emailing like tech infrastructures being impacted as well, essentially is what I'm trying to say, which is something new, and it's something that we need to watch out for.
Thank you very much. And what about this accusation of Islamism that often is used in newspapers and perhaps used as a basis for decision-making on banking?
I don't want to get into a philosophical debate about Islamism and whether it's a correct or appropriate term and the goods and bads about it, because that needs a different kind of discussion. But what I want to focus on is firstly, this whole case of Nigel Farage emanated from the argument that banks do not close down accounts for political considerations or ideological affiliations of the clients. So, let's assume I'm an Islamist. Let's assume that I am the face of the Muslim Brotherhood in the UK, as some might think. I'm going to make the argument. It means the banks do close down accounts for political considerations. Otherwise, why close down my account? Why close down my account? If not for political considerations, that's proving my point. Now, the other thing I'd like to say in this vein is that in this country, murderers, rapists, arsonists, they don't have their bank accounts closed down. They don't. someone who spends 10 years in prison comes out and resumes using their bank account. Banks do not close down accounts for convicted killers. They do not. So how and why do people like myself and hundreds, probably thousands of others have their accounts closed down when we have done nothing wrong? And by the way, I'd like to end on this. And because, you know, I understand. Sometimes it hurts because the impact is so personal. And when you're speaking to your friends or colleagues or brothers and sisters, you sort of expect empathy and some sort of support. But I understand when someone sort of asks, he said, well, you know, is it maybe because, you know, trying to understand. I understand this because the decision is so absurd. So people they're trying to find a reason why and how can this happen in a country that is, you know, governed by the law, that is democratic, that is, you know, transparent and the such. How can this? So they're trying to find, and therefore people say, Anas, you know, maybe you said something wrong, maybe you posted something somewhere, maybe you met the wrong. I have, and this is something that I have stated several times on the record, all the way back since 2014 and until now when my Barclays bank account, and I hope you'll allow me about 5 or 10 minutes just to describe what's happened with the latest episode, which is still ongoing, by the way. And that is, I have never in my entire life, never have I ever been stopped, have I ever been questioned, have I ever been summoned to a police station, to, I don't know, anywhere. I've never received a letter from my bank telling me that I have done something wrong. Never in my entire life. So if I am supposed to be this problematic person, surely, from a security point of view, someone would be interested in having a chat with me, saying, you know, Anas, come in, we'd like to have a word. We'd like to see, why are you doing this? You know, who's behind this? Never, ever, on a personal or on, you know, my work and my business, the Cordoba Foundation, has this ever happened at all. And that's, once again, why we need to address this issue as an issue that pertains to human rights, as, you know, just like you said when you opened, it's a matter that calls into question the whole issue of racial equality, discrimination, particularly against Muslims. Yes, now we are finding out, just like, you know, in the case of Nigel Farage, that there are others, non-Muslims, who are also being debanked. The concept is wrong. The whole argument, we should be, and I am willing to put my name and to fight for Nigel Farage's right to have a bank account and not to be closed down for his political reasons. Fine, financial decisions, make a financial decision, but don't close down people for their political affiliations.
Thank you very much. And can I just end on, before we go to the audience and get some views? At the beginning, HSBC was seen as a big problem on this issue in particular. Of course, now we talk about Barclays and many others. But at that time, at the early stages, when you were facing the issues, HSBC was quite big. You talk about how Peter Oborne came to you and spoke to you about it. Can you talk a little bit about, if this is something you're aware of what happened to Peter Oborne when he wanted to write about this in the Telegraph and how he wasn't able to?
Yeah, this was before we met with Peter Oborne. He tried to highlight this issue before, when he was, he was working with the Telegraph at that time. And of course, they didn't allow him to do that. Now the Telegraph and the other right-wing media, they all jump on Nigel Farage case and defending him and accusing the banks and so on. But in our case, no one, not a single newspaper or media, they were willing to discuss this matter. And when Peter Oborne tried to highlight it, he been sidelined by the Telegraph before, and even after that, he couldn't really put anything in any media platform. I just want to mention about the HSBC, that we even approached the CEO of the HSBC. I remember going with our local MP, Jeremy Corbyn. Our local MP in that area is Jeremy Corbyn, before he became a Labour leader. I remember going with him to the Canary Wharf when we went to the headquarters of HSBC, and we met the CEO of HSBC to discuss this and find out why this happened. I couldn't believe what I heard. I asked him a single question: what is the reason? He said, I can't give you the reason. And I'm really sorry for you. And if you want, you can put the blame on my shoulder. But I cannot say more than that, because the decision is not my decision. And who's saying that? The CEO of HSBC. So if it is not his decision, whose decision is? So it's a huge thing. I mean, when I heard about when I heard him saying that, I was shocked. Look, so I realized at that time that there is no way of getting back our bank account by HSBC, and we have to go and look somewhere else. But this shows how big this issue is. It's not about closing. There is something wrong, and they close the account. It's more than that. It's a political, religious issue. And I think we should link it in a way or another with what's happened with Islamophobia and what's happened to the Muslims when it comes to discriminating against them. And that's what it is exactly. It's not about something these organizations or individuals did something wrong.
Thank you so much. We'd like to get some views and thoughts from the audience, if that's okay. So let's start. There are a couple on that side. So let's start with Zaid and then go to Mohammed.
Thank you very much. Clearly this problem isn't Islamophobia. Clearly this problem, because I think the fact that Nigel Farage has been involved shows that it's not Islamophobic. It's not about something that's against the left wing. So what is the root cause of all of this? What is the problem? Who is making this decision?
Can I go? That's a very, very good point, and I think it has a lot of truth. But let me first of all address the issue of Islamophobia. You see, what Islamophobia does is that it distorts the playing field. And therefore, what I can say in this regard is that because of Islamophobia, it becomes easier for the decision maker to close down Finsbury Park Mosque's account. It becomes that much easier to close down my account, or the accounts of many, many organizations. That's the role of Islamophobia. I'm with you. I don't think it's driven by Islamophobia, but Islamophobia is a very important factor. So let's not think of Islamophobia as a direct attack, you know, either verbal or in terms of certain practices and the such. Sometimes the prevalence or the dominance or the availability of Islamophobia allows for others to act in a particular way, making it easier to target Muslims. You see, that's one thing. The other thing is, what do you think is the reason? When in 2014, when no one in the bank gave me an answer, I told the bank that I will give them 2 weeks to give me an answer as to why. Otherwise, I will have to come to my own conclusion. And for 2 weeks, I was silent. And then at the end, I said, and I did a public campaign on Facebook and on Twitter, and I said, this has happened. And my reason, which I have absolutely zero evidence for, but because I'm left with nothing but to guess, is because of my politics and my involvement in the campaign for Palestine, and for my criticism of certain regimes, particularly Arab regimes, very wealthy regimes and regimes who have a stake in HSBC at the time. And I pointed the finger at the UAE. And I said, I think this is firstly a political decision made in a financial institution, which is in itself a problem, but made in regards with a British citizen who has an account with a British bank, but the decision is made by a foreign entity accusing this British citizen of something that no one else in Britain has accused him of. And therefore, when I wrote to David Cameron at the time, I said, if I am suspected of terrorism, then please do bring me in for an interview. I mean, you have to. It's your job as Prime Minister to bring me in and to ask me, you know, if I'm a suspect. If I'm not a suspect, then it is your responsibility as my Prime Minister to stand up and to clear my name. Because you can't have a country like the UAE, a flagrantly dictatorial, authoritarian, non-abiding by human rights country, come and accuse anyone willy-nilly just because, you know, it doesn't like what they say. You know, accuse them of terrorism and the such, and then my country does absolutely nothing. I personally think, and I said at the time, listen, I'm saying this, I have absolutely no evidence for it. But come out and deny it. Come out, you know, the bank, anyone at the bank, come out and say, no, that's not the reason. No one did.
Just to add to that, I'm not saying that Islamophobia is the only reason for it, but we cannot deny that Islamophobia is part of it, part of the campaign. Why on earth a bank account of a mosque is being closed? And by the way, that time, most of the organizations who their bank account being closed are Muslims. So we cannot take this away from it. I'm not saying this is the only reason. There is other reasons, of course. But this is one of the reasons why we've been targeted. And as Anas said, because it's easy now, imagine a synagogue or a church or whatever, their bank account being closed. It will be huge, as Nigel Farage case. But because we, unfortunately, as a community, we now, anyone can attack certain organization or individuals from the Muslim community, and they see there no action or no reaction for that, then this will encourage them to do more and more, and this is what happened. So I'm not saying this is the only one, but again, I mean, it's a good question because I don't know the reason. I mean, I cannot think about a reason why our bank account is being closed. We are a small Muslim organization, small charity based in a local area in Islington. We don't have branches. We never received money from abroad. We never sent money to abroad. All our accounts is clear. So what's the reason? And by the way, we've been praised by the government because of the work we've done and changed this mosque from what it was before. And this is how, I mean, instead of showing gratitude to what we did, because we didn't do it only for us, for the Muslims, but we did it for the country. It was an issue for everyone. So instead of showing, you know, to show that and highlight what we've done in a positive way, it was the other way around when they closed our bank account and tried to tarnish our reputation.
I think what's really worrying is that we are British citizens. And it's very important to emphasize this. We're not second-class citizens. We pay our taxes, we abide by the law. And if this is happening to us today, tomorrow it will be somebody else. Which is why it's so important that as the British civil society, we come together and we actually talk about this and try to find a solution. All we want are answers. Why are our bank accounts being closed? That's all we want to know. If you can't tell us, as British citizens, as British organizations, and by the way, the issue of debanking isn't limited to international organizations. I want to make this very clear. One of the largest organizations that operates only in the UK cannot open a bank account. And they've been chased, and they've been sent on a wild goose chase of paperwork, trying to get an account with a mainstream bank, and they only operate in the UK. We cannot disclose.
Okay. No, wait.
Because we're as MCF.
No, Mohammed. I'll come to you in a second, inshallah. Shanina.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you for sharing your experiences, and it's very painful to hear, so I can't imagine what it's like to have actually gone through it. I want to just explore a little bit and understand from a slightly different perspective. You may or may not know that I work with big clients, big brands, big businesses, not the ones you've mentioned, but others that have the same kind of stature. And so we're always trying to understand the kind of consumer, like the positions you are in, and how they relate to big businesses. And the kind of things that I'm thinking about is we work with businesses to work out where are the systemic biases hidden, where are the problems which are probably underlying, you know, the root of, let's say, the problems that shouldn't happen. I mean, let's put to one side people who are up to really no good and shouldn't have bank accounts. So it's trying to understand how do we unlock where is the root of the problem, and who needs to be in the process so they can ask the right questions. So, you know, the things that kind of come to mind is, well, if WellCheck is the main database, for example, you know, who's doing the oversight for it? Who's analyzing the data? You know, already thinking ahead, like, how is AI going to change that process? And AI has systemic bias built into it, so is it going to get worse? And who's overseeing that? But also things like, in the banks, who is looking at collecting the ethnicity data? Is there a disproportionate impact on it? And what is the inequality that's being applied to its audiences? And is there a discrimination in that? And therefore, can there be a scrutiny or a process that can then be legislated for to show that this rule, which you could argue has some legitimate aim behind it, is being applied unequally? So I just want to understand a little bit about, you know, if the banks are private businesses and the government is saying, well, we can't do anything because they're private businesses, how do we unlock where the root of the problem is by applying that kind of consumer power?
It's a very important question, and it needs a very extensive and expansive discussion.
Sorry.
But no, it must be posed because it has. Let me try to touch on a few aspects of what you mentioned. First of all, the issue of Islamophobia. You see, this is, I mean, the term that comes to mind is that this is a package. You can't have Islamophobia in one sector of society and with the rest of society saying we're Islamophobia free. Okay, you can't. For instance, you can't be just a little bit racist. You can't be just, you know, the saying goes like, and you can't be just a little bit Islamophobic. I'll tell you how. One of the problems of Islamophobia is that, for instance, the Islamophobia of the media, which very few people, you know, really doubt. I mean, it's something that even the regulator even tries to address every year. There's, you know, an Ofcom report. The fact that there is a trace of Islamophobia, let's assume, it's far more than a trace, but let's assume it's a trace of Islamophobia. It means that as a bank, as a decision maker, as an employer, when I take away the banking facility of a Muslim, when I sack a Muslim employer, it won't cause me that big a headache. You know, the mere fact that there might be a trace of Islamophobia within the media, it won't be covered much. You see? So the impact of this mindset, and unfortunately it's not just this, I wish it was only the media, but this is something that is widespread. It's a problem. And although we've been talking about it, what has happened is that there are certain practices changed, certain wordings altered, but in actual fact, Islamophobia remains incredibly prevalent. Why? Because it comes from the very top. Because it is something that is sponsored by governments. So this is one part. But in terms of how do we unlock the, you know, where do we go to? Let me come back to the issue of WorldCheck. WorldCheck, by the way, on its own, as profoundly impactful as it has been, but believe you me, if you were to see my profile, the profile of Mohammed Kozbar or anyone, any other charity or the such, it would make you laugh, and I am not exaggerating. It would make you laugh. It's a Google search printed out literally by an 8-year-old. There is no analysis. There is no sort of context drawing, talking about nothing of that. Anas al-Tikriti, and these are everything that's said in Google. Okay? That's basically it. And therefore, the fact that this is allowed to have such a profound impact on individual and organizations' lives is telling. And that's why my own conviction is that this has got very little to do with WorldCheck. WorldCheck is a money-making thing. And it makes a lot of money, by the way. I mean, it has all the hotels, all the employers, all the companies, all the banks. Actually, the statistic that I knew about 8 years ago was that WorldCheck is the reference point for 49 out of 50 banks in the UK. Okay? So go figure. Every single client, by the way, their annual subscription to WorldCheck is £200,000. So imagine what kind of money is made.
I guess I'm asking from a slightly different perspective, which isn't going to solve it immediately. But really in the last 3 years in particular, what we've seen is that there is at least a nominal aspiration to kind of erase the problematic inequalities, racism, Islamophobia. And so, I wasn't familiar with WorldCheck or Refinitiv that own them till today, so thank you for sharing that. And I can't find their board of directors. Like, I don't know who they are. I don't know who holds them to scrutiny. But there should be somebody on there who is scrutinizing the quality of their data and output. So that seems to be a really obvious place to start, board of directors, non-execs, and so on. But equally, in the banks themselves, it would seem appropriate to have somebody, because we always say you need KPIs, you need to measure it to know what the problem is. So in the KPIs it would say, well, these are the people who've been debanked. Do they have a higher proportion of people who are from an ethnic minority, who are from from a Muslim background, such that then you can look at the disproportion and then you can use the mechanisms within that organization to go, you've got a problem. Like, you're not telling people what the problem is, but we can see in your big data that you are applying this regulation in an unequal way, which then opens them to exposure, which they'll hurry up and try and address. So it's trying to understand what are the mechanisms, and the Scrutiny and the Financial Conduct Authority is running an assessment of what's been happening with debanking, but who's on that process?
That's a very good question.
And do they have the right expertise to be able to ask these questions in order to be able to assess where are the problems? Because the initial stuff I'm reading by the guy from the FCA writing in the FT is, oh yeah, we don't think we have a problem, we're just going to kind of have a look because we're supposed to. It doesn't seem like a properly rigorous process. That's what I'm kind of like, I think it sounds like we need to use the private commercial organisations' own mechanisms to get people who understand it to be able to point to the problem.
Before I invite Mohammed to comment on this, I'd just like to make very quick points. Firstly, and whilst I agree with everything that you've said, but in this particular case, I think you're overthinking it. And I think you're giving them far too much credit. It wasn't as complicated as all of this. And that's why I continue to allege, and once again, I'm alleging, that it's simply a very powerful foreign stakeholder that is making the calls. And it doesn't take all that much in terms of process or the such too. So whilst everything that you're saying is correct, unfortunately it's not. But I come back to the main problem, because you see, my concern isn't the UAE, although the UAE is obsessed with me and my bank accounts, fine. But that's not my issue. It's a foreign government, just like Russia is, just like anyone else's. My concern is, what is my government and our authorities doing in order to protect us as citizens, law-abiding citizens? That's essentially my question. What the UAE, how much money it flaunts and gives to whoever in order to make certain calls, that's something I can't control. But what I can control, and I should control, is the fact that things are done properly.
Just briefly, since this issue occurred in 2014, I think 13, when this started, and we've seen many organizations start their bank accounts start closing by banks. Since that time till Nigel Farage case, there is no accountability or scrutiny at all, even from the government, even from the institution itself, from the banks, and we've seen what's happened to Coates and NatWest. So therefore, there was no accountability or scrutiny at all. Now, the government jumped in, and even the banks start talking about putting regulation and so on to make sure that, to make sure that at least clients should know about the reasons behind their bank account close. They didn't deny that they will do it again, but they will do it in a different way this time. So therefore, as Anas at the end said, it's about the government, what the government are going to do about it, what the banks are going to do about it, because they are the one who can make the change. As clients ourselves, or as individuals or organizations, nothing we can do, because we tried many times, and no one even listened to us. Now there is an opportunity because of the case of Nigel Farage. It's a high-profile case. So let's hope that this would happen in the near future, as the government and the Prime Minister promised that something will be done about it. So we have to wait and see. And if nothing happened, we should really raise our voice again and make sure that this is happening in the future.
Okay, I'm really sorry I've been told by the executives that I'm not supposed to continue anymore. It's been over an hour, so thank you so much. I know there are about 3 or 4 other questions that people are interested in. The panel, inshallah, are still around for a few minutes at least afterwards if someone wants to come and ask them a question directly. Thank you so much to the panel for speaking, for on this important issue, for raising the issues that have been raised today, and for making clear what the path forward is for this important issue. So let's, inshallah, let more people be aware of it, share the video when it comes out, and inshallah, hopefully, all of us are now better informed, understand the pain that they've gone through and the systemic issue that they've highlighted, and inshallah, we've got a way forward. Thank you so much. Jazakumullah. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you very much. Alaykum assalam. Thank you. Yeah. Thanks. I didn't get to tell you about Barclays. It's okay.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. That's what I want to hear about it. That's what I was. My bank since 1977, and I hate it. No, you can tell us in the. You know what? Maybe we can have the mic on again.